We're going to start with a live look at Lake Tahoe. Warm day expected there, looking very beautiful outside. And it is about that time for Extended Weather Fridays right here on ABC 10. So let's go ahead and get over to Rob Carlmark and Brendan Minchef.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Conchetta. Timed with the first day of summer, right? That things are warming up out there. Also timed with the first day of summer is hashtag Show Your Stripes Day, which is what you see behind us and also what's on my tie. And the stripes indicate things are warming up.
Exactly. This is these are colors that are used with real data here to explain what's been going on temperature-wise for average temperatures all across the planet. Clearly, there is a sign here and a sign that we should be paying attention to. We are warming up.
Yeah, so take a look at this, and you'll see the stripes there. And the red colors, especially the dark red colors on the right side of your screen, indicate the hottest years that we've had across the globe. Another way to visualize this is by actually making it into a bar graph. And you can see all the way back into those mid to late 1800s, it was in the blue. And then through much of the 20th century, it was also in the blue. But really over the last 50 years or so, we've started to see increasingly warmer and warmer years, not just across the globe, but also as we break it down to the United States and California as well.
Exactly, and it's important, you know, if you rely on the temperature, if you look at your thermometer and it says 100 degrees, you believe that it's 100 degrees, that it's hot. So this is the record of reliable record keeping. It's why it goes back to the 1860s. But what's interesting is that this is not cherry picking data. This is not cherry picking locations to tell a story. This is a trend, and these bars, how they align from cool to getting warmer, are happening all over the place for the land observations.
Yeah, and this is a pattern. We can reconstruct temperatures, you know, thousands and thousands of years into the past by things like tree rings, ice cores from Antarctica, and other sorts of measures. And so we can reconstruct these temperatures. And yeah, there's been some natural variation over the years, as you can see on that chart there. But then just over the last roughly 100 years or so, things really start to change. And certainly over the last 50 years, and that coincides with us burning fossil fuels.
Exactly, and it's a fair point to observe that the climate has always changed. We've seen that, but on that scale, it's the speed at which things are changing, which is really unprecedented going back to some recent eras, geologically speaking.
Yeah, and this is just from the Industrial Revolution all the way to last year, and look how much above average. We're approaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark above average globally, and that is an important mark because that was the number that was agreed at the Paris Climate Accords, is that we should not exceed 1.5 degrees C, and yet we are almost there on average. And certainly the top 10 hottest years on record globally have all happened since 2014 of the last 10 years.
And Brendan, we're only halfway through 2024, and it is very likely that we will at least make it on that list, if not be close to the top yet once again.
Yeah, certainly. And we know climate change has impacts on all sorts of things. This is called attribution science, the climate change influence on weather. Heat waves is one of them. We talk about the climate shift index showing levels 4, 5, how much that influences, especially overnight. But it also has impacts on things like hurricanes, on our heavy precipitation because warmer air holds more moisture. And on hurricanes, we can say it has impacts because the oceans are much warmer. Look how much warmer our sea surface temperature is this year compared to the average over the last 30 years. We are significantly above average this year, and the line below this year was last year. So we're seeing a new trend here.
Exactly. And you know, what somebody told me a long time ago, it's called planet Earth, but it should be called planet Ocean because that's mostly what at least the solar radiation sees. They see the ocean. So most of the warming that we've observed, and by the way, we can detect it on land, but a lot of that has been trapped in the oceans. And we're seeing record ocean temperatures across all basins, including the Pacific and certainly the Atlantic this year.
Yeah, and you made a good point there about it being planet Earth, right? Planet Ocean, but planet Earth as well. These stripes, similar. They work similar to the climate stripes, but they're called biodiversity stripes. And biodiversity is really all of the plants, the living organisms, animals, fungi. And look at what has happened over the last 50 years. There has been a decline, a 69% decline in biodiversity over just the last 50 years. You see how it goes from green to the gray there. Visualized differently, look at that. If you had, maybe to simplify it too much, but you had a lot more birds 50 years ago per se than you do today. And that, again, coincides with the period of greatest warming over the last 50 years.
Yeah, and it must be said, there's obviously other factors going on. There's the growth of populations, there's deforestation, there's other factors, but certainly at least one of the factors is reduced habitat to where these species can exist vary and survive in very specific conditions, those conditions are changing so rapidly they may not be able to adapt. That's one of the factors in reducing biodiversity.
Yeah, and so some solutions here, right? Reducing our transport emissions, but also electricity. And we can do that by moving to green, renewable energy. And we've seen record investments in that over just the last really 5 to 10 years. And Rob, we're really seeing that here in California.
Exactly. Just to bring it back to home, because we realize a lot of this can be bad news that seems insurmountable. Folks, what's going on in California, and we have to remember that California is the 5th largest economy in the world. There have been a lot of pledges, a lot of things that you hear about over the years, but the fact is that this year we've seen 69 out of 75 days through the winter and spring where we've had 100% renewable energy and more in the middle of the day. There's been 26 new projects that are pledged, $6 billion in the future, including offshore wind, which is going to be huge. And by the way, batteries have doubled the amount that they're putting back into the grid so far this year compared to last year.
Yeah, so we are making progress. It's not all bad news, but certainly there's room for improvement. And I think today with the climate stripes is just a reminder of that.
Exactly.
All right.